Right, welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk Eternals, right? We've got the box office total. Done really well. 71 million domestic, so just in America. And 161 million worldwide. That's pretty decent, right? It is, however, the lowest opening for an MCU movie since Ant-Man. That hit $57 million domestic. And it is fourth behind Venom, Black Widow, and Shang-Chi. So, it's not the greatest of this year. 71 million. I think Venom hit like 90 or 91 million domestic, if I remember rightly. Jasper cameo! Is that a haircut? Yeah! Anyway. So, yes, it's done reasonably well, right? Domestic totals, worldwide totals, box office totals, not indicative of quality, ever. I mean, Venom, Let There Be Carnage is an absolute result of that. 91 million or 90 million. And that film's utterly garbage. Venom, Let There Be Garbage. And I had all the garbage. It was horrible. Awful film. However, it has done well. Whether you believe it deserved to do well or not is another story. But the cope, the absolute cope, is an undeniable thing. Because, good God, the cope coming out of the news outlets is unbelievable. Actually unbelievable. Well, I mean, it is believable. So we'll dive into that today. Because it is fascinating stuff. So if you're new here, please do hit subscribe. We're going to have a look at this article first. This is on Variety. Like I said, the cope coming out here is absolutely hilarious. Why is Chloe Zhao's Eternals being called the worst MCU movie ever? For reasons that are not on screen. Yes, that's right. Must be bigotry and bias. Of course it is. No. Couldn't possibly be that people just didn't like the film. Of course, ladies and gents. So, I saw this article shared on Twitter by Robert Meyer Burnett. I like Robert Meyer Burnett. I think you're a good dude. Like, we've spoken before. I've watched his channel. He's watched mine. I really like him. I've got a lot of respect for him. He's just an all-round really nice, likeable dude. But he tweeted it out with, like, some like compelling points or something like that. I can't remember basically what he said. But I have to strongly disagree. Strongly disagree. And it's absolute cope. So there was an article from Variety, not Variety, or it was a Deadline or something like that, basically saying it must be because everyone just hates women directing action. What? What? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? So let's dive into this. We will look at Rotten Tomatoes as well, because loads of people keep referencing it. Because I did my review of it, and I really didn't like this film, right? And I did my review of that, and people are like, yeah, but Rotten Tomatoes, people are loving it. And I'm like, well, one, if not a lot of people have gone to see it, and it's rated quite high on Rotten Tomatoes, that's not a good gauge anyway. You could have 10 people go and watch a film, and they all like it. But, millions of other people chose not to watch it because they thought it looked like crap. So are the positive reviews something to then take into account at that point? Probably not. So that's really important, the actual pool of which to choose from to gauge the quality of a film is, not the best. But the other element here is just, I just don't get it. Like, why is this movie seemingly being protected by everyone? It's very strange. Now, is it the worst MCU movie ever? No, definitely not. There are worse films out there. And I think that's where people are getting their sort of misguided statements from here. They say here, for instance, right? I disagree with other critics all the time and don't generally blink an eye about it, but as soon as the news dropped that Eternals, the Marvel epic directed by Chloe Zhao, had received the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of any film in the 13-year history of the MCU, making it the first officially rotten film in the series, my hidden agenda detector went on high alert. It couldn't possibly be, as you said, that there's 13 years gone by and people are really judging these films now because there's a fatigue? Maybe? People forgive. Right, Thor the Dark Thor, or Thor the Dark World, is a terrible film. It's a bad film, right? It's shocking. It's shithouse. But because it came out at the peak of the MCU, do you not think that maybe critics and audiences forgave it a little bit? Yeah, probably. Now, after 13 years, do you think that audiences and critics want something a little bit more from their Marvel movies? Maybe. Does this not indicate that potentially there's a superhero fatigue? Yeah, maybe. I'm so confused why no one in mainstream media has just gone, oh yeah, but there's been 13 years, Marvel movies, superhero movies, yeah, people are probably a little bit sick of it now. Why has that not come out? So strange. Anyway, let's dive into this a little bit more, because it is hilarious. My hidden agenda detector went on. Of course it did. Hidden agenda. Must be hidden agenda. Rotten Tomatoes scores are, to put it mildly, not something to be regarded as if they'd been handed down on stone tablets, and yet mainstream media always does. Yet Variety has Rotten Tomatoes accredited reviewers. Alright. Yet based on that score, and much of the web chatter about the movie, and the fact that it received a mere B from audiences polled by CinemaScore, horrors, a meme has set in about Eternals, worst Marvel movie ever. Or at the very least a creative debacle. If you believe, as I do, that that's an outlandish piece of hyperbole, then you're going to start wondering about how and why exactly this collective trashing came to be. Of course! Are you ready for the cope? And it is cope. It's 100% cope. On a recent episode of The Take, my colleagues Clayton Davies and Elizabeth Wagmeister agreed that the Eternals as MCU disaster idea was, on some level, not unrelated to the fact that the film's director is a woman. Must be bigotry. Slap myself, it must be bigotry. Of course it is. Just them damn sexist critics are coming out. Them sexist troll critics that love Star Wars, the new trilogy. It must be sexism. Must be a bunch of misogynists. Fuck off. Anytime a woman takes on the action genre, which has been made typically for men to helm, people come down harder on that filmmaker. No, they don't. I think there is much truth to that assertion. Instantly, your opinion now does not matter. Like, are you joking? Unreal. A recent example, we saw the same kind of gnashing critical reception when Cathy Yan directed the 2020 DC film Birds of Prey. What a great example of how you're talking bollocks. Because that film was just bad. It wasn't that the action was bad, it was just a shithouse film. What a great example, ladies and gents. Cathy Yan, Birds of Prey. People hated it because a woman directed action, don't you know? Bunch of bigots. Ah, you bigots. Anyway, Chloe Zhao, fresh off her 2020 Oscar triumph with Nomadland, a film that basically no one saw, put serious things aside to play in the Marvel sandbox, and suddenly she has made the worst Marvel film ever. That's deeply suspect, especially considering that Zhao has such luminous technique as a filmmaker, much of which is on display in Eternals. Is it? I watched that film, and yes, a bunch of it was shot on location, but they also employed a whole bunch of horrendous green screen and CG over the top. Doesn't matter if you're shooting it on location in the desert. When you're a CGI puppet flying around the screen, people end up having a little bit of, a bit of enough of it at a certain point. I did not notice any unique sort of technical aspects in that film. There was nothing unique about it in any way, shape or form. It looked very much like a normal Marvel movie in that regard. That said, if there is indeed a dollop of sexism embedded in the trashing of Eternals, it would be difficult to prove. So while I agree with my colleagues that it's probably there, I'd like to offer my own theory, also unprovable, but it's what I think as to why Eternals has been treated so cavalierly. Here we go, ladies and gents. Are you ready? This is fantastic stuff. I won't reiterate the film's virtues, but in terms of the Rotten Tomatoes score, one has to ask, really? Worse than brain-bogglingly humdrum Thor the Dark World? No, it's not. It's not worse. But we've had 13 years now. People want more. We expect better. That's the thing. People have had enough. People are getting a certain amount of fatigue. The cheesy, clunky Iron Man 2. That's not a good one to reference, because again, it was very early on. And people really do think those movies are garbage. Now, if you ask them to go back and re-review them, I'm sure they'd be even more scathing. That's the point. And the scarcely coherent Avengers Age of Ultron. Then again, Even if you do agree that Eternals should be wedged in ahead of those, what piques my curiosity about the whole Eternals be damned reaction is that so many of the critics who have trashed the film are the kind of lofty cinephiles who've been ardent supporters of Chloe Zhao. So yeah, it couldn't possibly be that they've just had enough, right, of Marvel movies. You could say that this proves they don't have a bias against her or for her. In fact, you might assume that they'd be bending over backwards to salute her creative union with the MCU. Instead, I think they bent over backwards the other way to condemn her creative union with the MCU. That's it, ladies and gents. This guy literally thinks, guy or girl, I can't remember. This guy literally thinks that people are trashing this film because critics want Chloe Zhao to leave the MCU. We are at peak tard level. Like, what goes on inside your mind when that is the go-to reason? It couldn't possibly be that people have just had enough. 13 years. Again, if you asked them to go back now and re-review those other films, I'm sure they would absolutely trash them. But why, if my hunch is correct, would they do that? In a strange way, the trashing of Eternals has happened out of a dogmatic, slightly perverse, more highbrow than thou loyalty to Chloe Zhao. Or, rather, to something she represents. I'm a Zhao believer. I think the rider is brilliant, but last year I was one of the few critics to have a serious reservation or two about Nomadland. It's a film made of awesome ingenuity and humanity, but by the end of it, a certain sentimentality of vision sets in regarding Frances McDormand's Fern and her stubborn allegiance to her neo-hippie life and a van existence. The way I half-jokingly put to friends was, sorry, but I'm too middle-class to buy that ending. And that was my honest feeling about it. I wish that feeling had been shared by more of my colleagues, but so be it. The praise for Nomadland was an undivided wall of rapture. That's right, ladies and gents. If everyone likes it, you must like it too. It's funny how sheep people are, really, isn't it? The glimpse of that same wall in the trashing of Eternals, and here's what I think it means. Chloe Zhao is a major film artist, and as a woman of colour, because we have to put that in there, don't we? A trailblazing force in the newly developing power dynamic of Hollywood. Marvel movies, which critics by and large are publicly blasé about and privately sick of. So maybe now they're just not privately sick of it. Maybe now, even in your own theory, they are now just releasing their views publicly. Did you ever think about that? Oh, it's not going to get the clicks, is it? Symbolise the opposing force, the monolith of movies as kidified product. The MCU is the quintessential mainstream expression of the old power structure, an industry smug in its corruption, run overwhelmingly by men. Fuck me. That has been feeding us a non-stop diet of fantasy since the salad days of Lucas and Spielberg. In my own review of Eternals, I noted that Zhao had taken her fluky and distinctive neo-realist style and left it on the shelf. In Eternals, she's a good soldier who buckles down, plays ball and gives in to the mass conventionality of Marvel storytelling. And I think a lot of critics look at the result and think they defeated her. So in your own, do you not think that maybe that's just because, like, do you not think that it's not to do with that, and it's just because it's a bit of a blasé, boring, bland film that you yourself have just admitted that critics, generally speaking, don't like? Is it? Am I the only one here that sees? Am I the only one that sees this? Tell me. Anyone? 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 There are certain enemies you can't compromise with. And though I think the 100-year history of movies and the future of movies, if they're going to have a future, hinges on artists embracing the medium's populist dimension, it's my sense that the critical establishment today increasingly prefers to see cinema on two separate tracks: the jumbo-sized popcorn movies made for a mass audience and the smaller, more artful movies made not for a mass audience. Chloe Zhao doing a Marvel movie and subjugating a lot of her directorial personality to it threatens that dichotomy. If she's trying to work, not just literally but aesthetically, within the power structure, then she's not fighting the power. That's right, ladies and gents. Bigotry and woman of colour affected by Marvel. Couldn't just possibly be that people have had enough. I just don't get it. Like, look, it's done well. It has done well. But, yeah, no, I don't get it. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I thought this was hilarious. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give the video a like and please do share it. If you like the movie, honestly, more for you. Seriously, I wasted 2.5 hours of my life and I don't wish that upon anyone. Thanks so much. Take care.